Yeah, I think the number one thing is like there's always going to be a yes for you have to assume that rejection is game where out of every 90 no's or 99 no's there's going to be one yes, right? And all you care about is that one yes. People say you learn more from failures than successes, right? It's the same thing, right? You learn more from rejections than actual approvals.
Welcome to Sales Team 6 podcast, in which we talk about how to build high-performing teams with high-performing leaders. Today, I've got on Deepak Anchala. Deepak is a second-time founder and accomplished entrepreneur, track record of success in sales intelligence and AI spaces. His first company, Slintel, was acquired by 6 Sense after raising $25 million in venture capital and scaled to over 300 customers. He's been a key contributor in a lot of 0 to 1 startup journeys, which we're going to get into. And 2 as a founder, post-acquisition, Deepak led product strategy for a 50 million ARR portfolio, showcasing his ability to excel across the product, sales, and business development spectrums. He's also the author of Idea to Exit, a guide for entrepreneurs on building, scaling, and exiting startups. And I'm super excited to talk today because he has experience across every single level of the startup world. Deepak, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Zach. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming on. So you've had a pretty cool journey. You've done from a business and sales background to founding startups to exiting. What was behind the transition? How did you kind of talk about your journey, your rise up through that?
Yeah, absolutely. Throughout my life, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur from my childhood days. I think that's the story every entrepreneur gives, right? There were a lot of instances where I wanted to start non-tech businesses. Back in the day, I wanted to do a bowling alley. I wanted to do a lot of different stuff, which didn't materialize. And, I came to the Silicon Valley back in 2015. And when I was here, I was working in the startup world. I saw a couple of 0 to 1 journeys myself. I was the first business hire in a company called Traction and later on in a company called Eightfold. And throughout these journeys, right, I faced constant rejection, right? Like when you're talking to potential customers as a business hire, you're trying to create a market doesn't exist, right? So you kind of go through that motion. And both companies had, scaled them to the first few million. So had a really good understanding of what it takes to kind of scale when the product is really, really early. So I looked at all of that. And then I also had like a very deep pain point I wanted to solve myself when I was back in Eightfold. And I put everything together and said, can I go ahead and finally become an entrepreneur? So that happened like back in 2016 when I started Slintel.
Very cool. And you mentioned something that I want to get deeper into because we talked about rejection, facing down rejection. And I think from, whether it's from the owner, the founder, the leadership, or even the people working, the salespeople day to day, I think fear of rejection is one of the biggest things that holds people back or causes ultimately failure. I've seen people, they'll hit a few rejections or a few setbacks and decide that they can't do it. So how do you, what's your philosophy or what's your mindset when it comes to pushing through rejections and getting through the other side of that?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is like, there's always going to be, a yes for, you have to assume that rejection is game where out of every 90 no's or 99 no's, there's going to be one yes, right? And all you care about is that one yes. You don't care about the 99 no's, but you have to take every rejection as a learning opportunity. Like people say you learn more from failures than successes, right? It's the same thing, right? You learn more from rejections than actual approvals, right? So why are they rejecting you? Was your positioning wrong? Are you not saying it the right way? Is your product not really delivering their need? Is it the wrong ICP persona? So you start asking all these questions and you continuously iterate until you find that one yes. And then your rejection rate still is there, but it kind of gets lower and lower, right? The next 100, you might have a 90% rejection rate and then an 80% rejection and a 70%. But your goal is to kind of navigate that rejection rate journey.
Yeah, it's powerful. Learning from rejection, you hear people say that you learn from the failures. And I know for me, one of the things that really shifted for me, because it's so easy to take it personal, right? Especially if it's your idea and it can feel like it's okay, they're rejecting me. One of the biggest things that shifted for me was recognizing that they're not actually rejecting me. They don't know me. They're rejecting my approach. They're rejecting my communication. And so that helped me really not take it personally. But if I'm being honest, it still stings a little bit. How do you keep your eyes on, how do you keep going? Even let's say you've gotten through those, let's say you're up to 95, 96, 97 no's. How do you keep going? If someone was listening to this, how do you keep going even when it seems like it's never going to work?
Yeah, I won't lie, right? I think you will reach a state where in a lot of times, like, you start questioning every single thing. Is it me? Is it the choices I'm making? Why am I doing this startup? What is happening? And you're going to face this rejection everywhere, right? Not just with customers, with in fundraising. So many VCs are going to reject you. Finding co-founders, so many people are going to reject you, right? So this is a constant battle for startup founders throughout. But I feel like the lens you should apply is that with every rejection, am I getting better, and am I learning anything from that rejection? If you are not, then time to pause and reflect and see like what else can you do differently. Like, you can't take rejection forever. Like, you still are waiting for that yes, right? If that yes is not coming 6 months later, 4 months later, maybe you have to pivot. Maybe you have to do something else. What is rejection telling you? At the same time, you can't be completely stubborn and say, like, I'm talking about startup founders, like, I'm going to build this product, even if everybody's saying, no, we're not going to pay money for it. And you keep doing that for 2 years without any success, right? So there's a point where you have to see, are you improving, or should you pivot, or should you do something else, or should you change your strategy? Maybe you don't change your product. Maybe it's just the way you approach things, right? How do you improve?
Yeah, and how do you know exactly where that point is? I think we've all heard. You're familiar with the term 3 feet from gold? Are you familiar with that story? So it's a story that gets told in business a lot, but I think people miss the point. So there's a story from the gold rush where everybody was going out digging for gold, digging for gold, digging for gold. And one guy was digging and digging and digging, and he never hit gold. And he decided to give up, sell his equipment, and move on to something else. And somebody else bought his equipment, bought his land, bought it all. And upon surveying the land a little bit more closely, realized that he was actually just 3 feet. If he dug 3 feet over, he would have hit, and count riches. He would have hit a ton of gold. And so I hear this story told a lot, and people talk about, keep going, you're 3 feet from gold. But where I think the story gets misinterpreted is if he kept digging in the same place, he never would have hit gold. He was digging in the wrong place. So he didn't need to keep digging 3 more feet. He needed to actually dig in a different place. So how do you know whether you just need to dig 3 more feet, or you need to move over 3 feet and dig in a brand new place?
Yeah, I think great question. I would also add like another dimension to it. Are you digging with the right shovel? Are you digging in the right place, right? Like you said, because sometimes you could be digging in the wrong place forever and you'll never find it, right? Like you need to know all these variables. Are you digging in the right environment and all of that, right? I wish there was like a magic bullet and an easy answer to that. I think the only way, like I say, is like, if imagine myself as a digger and I'm digging for gold, right? Like, even before you start digging, you have to obviously start looking at, is probability favoring you or not favoring you, right? Like, in the sense that, like, I'm just giving examples, right? So when you look at the terrain, is this a terrain that people generally find gold in? Is this the right shovel? Is this the right environment? Am I the right person to do this? So you kind of question, assuming you have check mark all those questions, right? And you have a pretty good conviction that these are maybe 4 or 5 spots where you can find gold. I think that's when you start getting deeper. But at some point, if you don't, right, I don't think you should keep doing that forever. Like, you can't live your whole life just digging and not finding anything, right? So at some point you will have to like re-question those assumptions that you made and move on and try maybe a different shovel in a different place at a different time. You'll have to make those choices in life. But there's no magic bullet here.
No magic bullet, but a lot of, and I think experience really counts for something. And having somebody going out digging for their first time versus somebody that's done other dig sites probably knows a lot more about pitfalls and problems to avoid. So for you, like, what lessons? You had a lot of success with Slintel. What are the key lessons that you took away from that, and how are you applying them to your current work?
New startup, yeah, actually lots. So I would say number one is find a wave that you can ride. Like, especially when you're building businesses, you need tailwinds. Tailwinds accelerate businesses a lot, right? So right now there's an AI wave that's happening. And I think Sam Altman talks about this a lot, and so do other AI founders, is don't bet against the wave. Don't bet against like things that AI cannot solve, right? So long story short, I think when you're building something, if there is a wave and a wave carrying you along with it, the journey becomes so much easier and you can really accelerate your way to success, right? So that's one big learning. Don't underestimate that and go with the wave. The others are, hire like a really good team in the beginning, the best team you can hire, right? With the funds you have, with the brand name you have, obviously there's only so much you can do to attract the best talent, but don't compromise on talent, because people build companies. And then empower them. Right? Step back, give them the tools they need, and watch the magic happen. So I think those would be like common principles I would apply to my new business too.
So find a wave that you can ride. Don't try to create the first wave, and then get the right people in, and then let them do their thing. I heard a really good. I was doing one of these interviews a couple days ago, and somebody said something that changed the entire way I thought about things. And he said that for every job, everything that you don't want to do, there's somebody out there that loves to do it and is 1,000 times better at you than it and would love to do it. And it's so easy. I know, at least in my experience, it's so easy to be like, I don't like this task, so probably nobody else does. So I'll just do it because it has to get done, without realizing that there's somebody, that would, I don't know the first thing about data migration, but there's somebody that lives and breathes it and would love to do it. So I think getting the right people in and letting them do their thing is really, really critical.
I think you have to hire people for tasks that you cannot do, or people who can do tasks better than you, and watch them do it, right? Like ask them to do it and watch them do it, and don't guide them beyond a certain point.
I imagine sounds like you've got a good team and you know what to look for. But I imagine you've probably had some team maybe hired wrong people or had bad people that weren't the best fit come through. So what do you look for, when you're evaluating somebody for a role or for a job or a task? What do you look for both in qualifications and disqualifications?
Yeah, that's interesting questions. I think the obvious things of, a lot of people look for are, they look for, I'm not saying this is correct, but people look for good brand names, right? They look for good pedigree. They look for career transitions. They look for all of that. But at the same time, there are people who are early in their careers or who are later in their careers who still might excel, when they put in a role that really excites them. So what I would look for, and I've hired a bunch of people in Slintel. We had grown to over 100 employees before we got acquired. And what I noticed was not always do you find like the people with the best resume skills, like are people who are doing the job really well, right? Sometimes you have to give others an opportunity. The way I look at it is I try to build teams, right? I look at it as like when you're building a sales team, for example, or a marketing team, you want a right mix of experience and energy. You want a right mix of, hey, I know how this can be done. I've done it before, versus I'm super hungry. I want to learn how to do it. And you want to pair all of them together in a team. And that team creates the most value, right? So I try to look for complementary skills when I'm hiring team members. But when I'm hiring individuals, let's say, even keeping the team angle aside, I do look for certain traits, right? I do look for willingness to do the job over anything else, right? I do look for like coachability, learnability, ability to take on new challenges, extreme accountability in startups, because you can't tell people what to do. And in general, like people who take initiative and just get stuff done. I think those would be the right set of people I would go after.
You're looking for not just the hard skills, but also a willingness to do the job. And I remember in the military, one of the things that I learned from one of my leaders was that he'll take the person that has the enthusiasm and the hunger over the person that has the technical skills, because the person with the hunger, even if they don't know how to do it, because they have something to prove, they'll find a way to learn it. Right? They'll stay up late, they'll work weekends, they'll find a way to get the job done at a high level because they want to prove that, versus somebody that's technically skilled but doesn't have that hunger. So it's cool that you blend the two and you look for both to complement each other.
I mean, take a real life example, right? Like let's take sales. And a VP of sales who's taken a company from 10 to 100 million ARR, and who has done that 3 times in his career, how motivated will he be to do it for the 4th time in his career? Maybe he will. Maybe you'll find some VPs of sales who are, but versus someone who's just never done it, or who's just seen the 10 to 20 journey, 10 to 30 journey, and they really want to see the next phase of journey. So you have to give people chances, is what I believe. And that's when like people really, and a lot of times, you're faced with this question of, do you promote people internally who have never done this job before, or do you hire externally? And again, it's a balance. And I do strongly believe in internal promotion though, as in if people are demonstrating that skill and demonstrate that hunger because they already know the culture, they're showing the hunger, then give them the chance, right? And if you can't find anyone, then go hire external.
Mm-hmm. No, it's powerful. I got a piece of advice that I got actually was, there's probably some, the way it was said to me is, there's probably some 20-year-old guy with no experience in your inbox right now that would love an opportunity to learn and to work. And I remember I heard that. And then shortly after that, I actually had exactly that. It was a 20-year-old guy from Serbia who, a month literally changes this guy's entire life. And he didn't have the technical skills. And the first few months were a bit of a headache getting some of the stuff trained up. but that hunger was there, and you can't teach that. If somebody's not hungry and not driven to do it, you can't give that to somebody. And that turned out to actually be one of the best moves I've ever made, because, helped me, helped him, helped his family. And it just had this really cool ripple effect, all because I was willing to take a chance on somebody that just a basic desire, a basic drive. So I think that's really, really powerful. Shifting gears a little bit, AI, what's, the hot button, everyone's talking about it. It's exciting. It's a little bit scary. I think nobody knows exactly where it's going to go, but what's, I like to be optimistic. What's exciting to you about the current state of AI?
I'd say I have to be extremely optimistic about AI in general because I'm building an AI too, but I do understand the risks of AI very well. Overall, I think in my opinion, it's a net positive environment. AI is tremendously impacting all of us in ways that people thought never before, right? Everybody's productivity I think, has already seen so much of a boost. Like I use ChatGPT for asking any questions, doing a lot of stuff in my day, and so does everyone else. So that frees up time. And freed up time can be used in more creative ways, or doing more stuff with your family or for your own self. So that's very empowering. I feel like the AI wave that we are seeing right now is very similar to like the internet wave. I wouldn't even compare it to the cloud wave or the mobile wave. I'd probably compare it to the internet wave, because it's such a groundbreaking fundamental technology that is seeping its way into every organization. Like the cloud wave or the mobile wave, not every company became a mobile company. Not every company became a cloud company. I mean, people moved to it over time. I think when the internet wave happened, everybody had to have at least a website, right? Like even a non-tech company just had to have a website. So I think we're seeing a similar shift with AI. Everybody has to think of like, how do I incorporate AI into my processes, into my applications, into my products, into my people's workspaces. So there's tremendous opportunity. And there is, and you see like all the big guns in the world, right? I was listening to Jeff Bezos, I think the other day, and he said like AI is like electricity, right? It's permeating everywhere. And a lot of, top honchos they've all focused on the AI division of their company and seeing like, hey, what can I do here? So I don't disrupt my core business and I still build something that is truly creative that I can.
So it's almost sounds like it's almost becoming a necessity.
Absolutely. I think anyone who doesn't adopt AI, like be it a company or a person, I think will be left behind. So it's probably better to embrace it, knowing its limitations, guardrails, and all of that. But it's probably better to embrace it and become more productive overall.
Absolutely. How do you see? You mentioned greenfield opportunities in AI. What does that mean exactly, and how can people use them?
Yeah, if you think from a first principles basis, right? Break it down. So obviously there's productivity improvement that's happening, right? Companies are trying to make sure their employees are more productive, their customers are more productive. So they are using AI. Individuals like you and me, we are trying to use AI in our daily lives, right? For small tasks, so we are more productive. Applications are trying to use AI. So the UX of applications is also changing now, where the way we were interacting with applications in the past is probably no longer going to be the way we interact with them in the future. So there's all these productivity improvements, company, people level that's coming in. But what also excites me a lot is there's new opportunities that are being created that never existed before. It's not just a productivity improvement. So for example, you hear these terms a lot, AI agents, AI teammates. I'm sure there's a lot of other AI words that you hear. But essentially what people are saying here is they could be entire functions, business functions that are automated with AI, right? So they could be an AI coder, for example, or an AI bookkeeper. It could even create new jobs that people did not think existed, right? So I don't know if you saw the latest release from OpenAI, Sora, which released like 3 days ago, where you can create. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. The website is pretty amazing. There's so many videos that they have put. I've been trying to get access, but it's still limited access right now. But there's some amazing videos people can generate, and just looking at them, you start thinking of how many jobs can this create, right? Like how much faster can we make movies? How much faster can we do like podcasts like these? So that's just one example. And then Cloud, for example, came up with their computer use, which they showed like a browser, a mouse going and clicking through the browser and doing tasks on behalf of humans. Again, that could create like so many more opportunities. The most exciting thing, Zach, about the AI space is everybody is innovating. The pace of innovation is absolutely insane, right? Because there's some product release coming every day from somebody. It's hard to digest all of that, right? But when you put it all together, there's so much opportunity. There's so much you can build on top because a new ecosystem is being created.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. And I know what you mean because it almost seems like every single day I see something, I'm like, oh, we have that now. We have a technology that does that. It's just things that seem futuristic. I remember I used to work in the film and video production industry years ago, and now things that would have taken somebody months to do by hand can literally get done in 10 seconds just by an app on your phone, which is crazy. You said something interesting about, there's a lot of talk about AI taking jobs, right? AI getting rid of everybody's job, but you see more jobs being created. What does that look like? And if we were thinking ahead, what does the future of jobs with AI look like?
Yeah. So just like, any environment that boosts productivity significantly, like even if you think of the industrial revolution that happened, right? New jobs got created, the older ones got replaced. So even with AI, if you look at what AI is really doing, I would say that daily monotonous mundane jobs that nobody wants to do, right, could be completely automated by AI. AI could like show us ways to do more creative jobs. Like for example, like a YouTuber did not exist for many years ago, right? Like so there's a lot of jobs that got created with the social wave. So similarly with AI, there's so much more opportunity. And I feel like we are at the very beginning stages, right? So it's hard to predict what types of jobs will get created. I would assume that any job that involves a human to human relationship, like for example, selling, talking to people, customer relationships, etc., will continue to exist the way they are because there's a human to human connection. Any job that requires analysis, back office work, etc., to a large extent, the productivity can be boosted using AI because AI can do a lot of stuff, but they will continue to exist. There could be a lot many new jobs being created, which we can't even fathom at this stage, right? But just like nobody thought YouTuber would be a job like 10 years ago. So I'm sure, and there's so many YouTubers right now, right? So I just foresee that happening again.
Yeah, and I certainly, I think there was a lot of talk about will sales be replaced, but I'm with you. I think at the end of the day, nobody wants to buy from a robot. People always want to connect, and the need for human to human connection will never go away. At least I hope not, because that's my entire business is literally based on human to human connection and behavior profiling. So if it does, I'm in trouble. But I'm curious.
I feel that this actual selling part where you're talking to people and convincing people because people buy from people. People are buying relationship based on relationships, not just purely based on products. So I find it hard to believe that part will go away, but probably parts of it like prospecting, reaching out, doing the research. And because I've been in those roles before, I think a lot of that stuff can get automated. Maybe not entirely, but to a good portion.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, because there's so much new every day, there's AI platforms creating new AI platforms, at least it looks like. And, there's part of me that's like, it'd be cool if I just to sit down and play with every platform and learn every tool that came out and just do that all day. But there's so many things coming out. So for somebody who's whether a business owner or a team leader, or even just just somebody who's curious about it, how would you go about deciding what AI tools to learn and then learning them? Like, how would you approach that with limited time?
I think it really depends on what your role is and what do you really require? What tools do you really require to do your job better? I mean, there are fundamental tools like Claude, OpenAI, stuff like that, which probably all of us will use, maybe Google, Microsoft. But then on top of that, the stack really depends on your role. And like, for example, if you're in sales, then probably tools that improve prospecting, that maybe help find people to reach out to, record conversations better, etc. So you have to look out for AI tools that come in those spaces and then see if it makes sense for you or not.
Mm-hmm. So basically look at the tasks, the things that you do day to day, because you put the mundane daily tasks, and then look for AI solutions to those specific things that you do in your role. That's good. Cool. And then you mentioned you're passionate about solving hard problems, which I think is just so cool. Because a lot of people, I think, shy away from hard problems. So can you share, is there like a particularly tough problem that you came up that you tackled and how you approached it?
There's so many, at least in my startup journey. Just to name a few, right? But I'll talk about one of them. Just to name a few, finding my co-founder was extremely difficult, right? As a first-time founder, getting the first fundraise was extremely difficult. Getting the first customer was extremely difficult. So these were all hard problems. But I'll probably talk about one problem that comes to mind, which was during COVID, right? When COVID started, I think everybody went through this phase with their investors and the board. Hey, what do we do? Right? Because there was so much uncertainty that would business go down for next 6 months? And do we have enough cash in the bank? Do we have enough runway? Should we cut down on employees? What do we do? So we came up with an interesting proposal. We thought hard and we had made a bunch of offers just 3 months before that. And it would be so tough to go back and rescind those offers or, even reduce staff at that point, not knowing what COVID would do to our business. So we made but we needed runway. So we made the hard call. We said, let's go and put this in front of our employees and see what they have to say. So we put this proposal in front of everybody, which is not like what somebody would do and say, hey, what do we do, guys? Like we are stuck. What do we do? Came out with answer at the end of the hour, right? So basically the answer was, we're not going to fire anyone. Everyone's going to take a 20% pay cut, right? For a period of at least 6 months. And in lieu of the pay cut, we offer ESOPs, right? So there is compensation coming from the ESOP pool. But we do this. And in 6 months, if our business recovers and we hit the numbers back again, then we revert pay and then everything is good. If not, then we figure out after 6 months what do we do. So we're kind of deferring the decision, but also taking immediate action. So we went back to our board, VCs, they questioned, hey, why do you want to do this versus, straight cuts, and explain the rationale. It worked. Surprisingly, COVID actually impacted us in a positive way because remote selling became the norm and we were helping with remote selling, right? So our numbers started ticking upwards in 3 months and we went back to all the employees and said, hey, guys, we are ready to reverse your salaries. Some of them said they didn't want that. They still wanted because they were getting more equity, right? So they said, no, we still want to keep getting more equity versus a salary, and went with it. But yeah, that's just one of those hard problems.
That's cool. And it's so counterintuitive because I think a lot of leaders would actually be afraid to go, admit, like it takes actually a lot of strength to admit, hey, here's a problem and we don't know how to solve it, and actually take that to the team. And I think a lot of people would be afraid of losing trust or losing confidence by admitting that. But it sounds like it was actually the opposite effect for you guys.
Yeah, I think we understood that employees, if we let go of anyone, it would be extremely difficult for them to find a job for the next year or so because COVID just started. Nobody was hiring. If you remember, every company had a hiring freeze at that time. So yeah, people come up with solutions, and sometimes may be the best one, may not be the best one, but you get the power of like everybody in one room.
Yeah, and you really took care of your people, which really shows who you are as a leader. The fact that you actually wanted to take care of your people at a time where it probably would have been easier, and lots of companies did, to cut their people, keep their own income. So it's really, really, really cool to be able to do that. Because there's a lot of uncertainty just in the industry, in the world right now that's kind of always seems to be the case, but especially with AI, with politics, with all this stuff going on. What advice do you have for founders or for leaders that are facing uncertainty in their industry?
I'd say number one, go back to first principle thinking. And to do first principle thinking, you need some time off. If you're busy, caught up with work, you can't do that. So the best thing I have found for myself is go to a beach, go to the mountains, get to a place where you have time for yourself. It could even be a morning walk or a jog. Spend more and more time there. If you're really stuck, you have to get unstuck. And you have to go back and start asking and go back to your mission and vision. Why are we doing this? And then start questioning every single thing. I found this anecdote from Girish, who was the founder of Freshworks. He said, you have to be passionate about your business, but you also have to be emotionally detached. And those are two different things, right? You have to be emotionally detached because you have to step aside as an audience and say, is this even the right thing? Are you positioning it right? Right? What is happening? And you have to be your biggest critic. Right? While you're still passionate about it. And that will help you uncover things. Maybe you have to change product. Maybe you have to go and change positioning. Maybe it's something else. Maybe you need more cash in the bank right now. So you have to go and figure out how to fundraise. But you will get answers deep within. And also surround yourselves with good mentors. I've always done that. Sometimes you can't solve all of this alone. For me, the best example would be the best founders have been founders who are one stage above me. Like if I'm Series A, Series B, Series B, Series C, D. Because they have gone through some of this stuff and they can advise.
Yeah, getting an outside set of eyes has always been a good strategy for me. Because as they say, you can't read the label from inside the jar, so to speak. I think some time in silence or having some time to yourself can be very hard to step away from all the day-to-day stuff. But I think it's why we have shower thoughts, right? When you're in the calm, in the quiet, it gives your mind time to figure things out. So what does a day in the life look like for you? Like what are your main focuses? What are the things that you kind of concern yourself with? What does that look like day to day?
Good question. I would say, few things high level, right? Sleep is very important, right? Personal time is important, and then professional time, right? So you need time for all three: yourself, time with family, and personal time, and then professional. So for me, I try to sleep 6.5, 7 hours a day, right? I have two kids, a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. So I spend at least 3-4 hours a day with them, working on their studies, homework, playing with them, teaching them stuff and all of that. And then obviously you have to spend some time with your spouse too, right? The rest of the time, I'm working. And for me, like, I believe in work-life harmony because, there are times where you have to do a little bit more work. There are some times where your family needs a little bit more attention. Like, people are sick in the house. So you can't really say, I'm going to work 8 hours. I'm going to do this for like 4 hours. So you have to be flexible, and as long as it's working for you, it's fine, right? So, if I break it down further into what do I do during my work day, right now, since we're building an AI product that will launch in the market early next year. So a lot of work goes into product designs, design reviews, validation with design partners, working with engineering team, giving them requirements, checking code that is coming out, attending conferences and validating further. And then, talking to people around, right? So it's more of just insane amount of like market validation. And like I said, being emotionally attached, questioning ourselves. Is this something people will really buy? Will they pay money? Why is it so important right now for people to buy? And how do we change the product? Spending most of my time thinking through. I would also say this is like the best phase of a startup, right? The first, until you get the product out and you get customers, because there's so much brainstorming happening with everybody in the team. Just get all your juices up and running.
Yeah, it's just a lot of talking to people, checking the products. You seem really excited about it though. Even as you're talking about it, so you're smiling, your energy, like you seem really excited about what you're doing. I imagine there's probably challenges or things that stress you out on a day-to-day basis as with any business.
Absolutely. No, there's always challenges. There's always this fear, paranoia, if you may to put it. Hey, what happens if this doesn't work, right? We have hired people. What happens to their careers? We have raised money. What happens to the money raised, right? So there's a lot of questions you start asking. What if this doesn't work? And I think they change at every level, right? Once you launch a product, then you're terribly worried, will customers love our product? Every single complaint that they're doing, kind of like, again, start questioning yourself. And as you're scaling, you have a completely different set of problems, like if employees are unhappy about something or customers. So there's always problems along the way. I would say, Zach, for me, the second startup, at least the first few months of this, have been way easier than my first startup for a few reasons. Second time founder was not that difficult to, raise funding, hire good employees, get a co-founder on board. These were extremely tough problems for me in the first startup. I spent like at least a year finding a co-founder. I went to every social networking event and would get turned down by every technical founder because good technical founders are rare. And I got rejected by 50 plus VCs in my first company before I was able to raise my first small 200K round when I had to quit my job and do it, right? So it started with an accelerator round. So I faced a lot of these problems in the beginning, which I think have become easier as a second. So I want to be honest, it's become easier, but I do know there are other challenges I'm going to face. Like, for example, the 0 to 1 journey is a 0 to 1 journey, right? There's no short circuit, right? Does the market want that your product you're building? If not, then it's the wrong product for the wrong market. And then the scaling problems also exist. So yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is like, I feel like if we don't challenge ourselves, feel free to disagree with me, but I feel like if we don't challenge ourselves, then we start rotting. What's the fun in life? There has to be challenge, and there has to be constant pushing the barrier, competing insanely hard and winning and losing sometimes, which is okay. But that's the only thing, like, at least I see, like, that keeps me really, really motivated in life.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And especially as men, having that challenge, it's kind of how we get stronger. And I think if people don't have a healthy outlet for a challenge, such as building something, they'll create a negative challenge. They'll create problems in their personal lives. So it's cool. I think it's just inherently part of human nature that we're going to seek out that challenge and seek out, goals and obstacles and kind of play that version of the game. So I think playing it in the way, I like the way you talk about it, with being okay with understanding that sometimes you're going to lose. Sometimes things aren't going to work. You're going to get 50 rejections before you get your first 100K, but you keep doing it. And if you play enough and you play long enough and you keep going, eventually you win. And you put your experience into a book called Idea to Exit. What was the motivation for that? And who's the ideal reader?
So the motivation was when I was looking up resources when I was building my first company. Like I said, it was extremely tough. I couldn't find many resources. I talked to people. I got some knowledge from some founders, but The knowledge hits my ears and then doesn't go out anywhere. So the book was essentially to help anyone, like any aspiring entrepreneur, mostly first time entrepreneurs, right? Figure out tough problems. Like how do you fundraise? How do you start a business? How do you scale? How do you hire your first employees? Find a co-founder? Because I'm sure many of them were going through the same problems I did in my first startup, and also wanted to make it easy for them, and also show the light at the end of the tunnel, right? And say, we went through an exit, a successful outcome. You can do that too. And here's how that happens. And here's how life happens post-exit. Again, I don't want to be too prescriptive because you can't, right? Every startup is different. Every industry market is different. So this was more of telling my story out to the world to see if people can take bits of it and apply it to their own startups.
Sounds like you wrote the book that you wish you had back when you were doing it the first time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Would have
saved you. Yeah. That sounds like it'd save some people out there, especially if you're first-time founders or people that are kind of early in the journey, save a lot of time just by getting your knowledge or your experience, which is really cool. So if people wanted to find your book or find more of you, where could people go?
Yeah. So Idea to Exit is the name of my book. It's available on Amazon. It's in 7 or 8 countries in Amazon. So Amazon US definitely has it. And there's also a website, ideatoexitbook.com. So that's the website where you can find more information. You can hit me up on LinkedIn if any of you is interested in chatting with me. I'm always open to chatting with new entrepreneurs, giving feedback. Deepak Anchala, just search me up and send me a message.
Awesome. We'll put links to all of that. And it's very, very generous of you to be willing to share your time or share your experience with new entrepreneurs. So very cool. I guess to sign off, do you have if you were to go back, and I know you wrote the book for your previous self, but if you were to go back and talk to yourself when you were first starting out the journey at the very, very beginning, if you could give yourself some piece of information or insight or some advice that would have saved you time or energy, what would you tell yourself at the beginning of the journey?
I'd say at the beginning of the journey, I would say life is going to be pretty hard. Like startups are generally very hard. So don't be afraid, right? Take risks. It's all right. And then learn to enjoy along the way, right? Because if you're not having fun, everything is extreme stress. So have fun. There are times you have to take yourself seriously. There are times you have to take yourself lightly. Family really helps you. Like keep your sanity, family and friends. Do all the things you love to do. There's no need to sacrifice on, I know some people do that. 10 years, they don't talk to their friends. They hardly see their family. They just put all their effort in your startup. I don't think it's worth it, right? I feel like life is short and you have, so do what is right for the company, but also do what is right for yourself and your family and your friends and just lead a happy life. And that my key takeaway.
Do what's right. Have fun along the way. Lead a happy life. Take those risks. That's awesome. Well said. Deepak, thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation. I'm really excited to get this out there. And I think there's a lot of useful stuff in here for a lot of people. So thank you so much. Do you have any final words or final message that you'd like to say out there?
No, I think this was great. Thanks, Zach. Maybe my final message for everyone would be just start, right? If you're thinking about starting up, just start. And then you'll figure things out along the way. You won't have all the answers before you start.
Just start. Awesome. Thanks, Deepak.
All right. Thanks, Zach.